I'm- And without any further ado, Cindy, you just take over.
Okay, thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? All right. So, I want to welcome you all, and I want to thank Mary for having me. This is just so exciting. I love talking about arranging for the harp, and I'm sure that most of you do arrange for the harp. And what I thought I would do is just to share some ideas with you. So, and takeaways, and maybe these are things that you could put into your arrangements and spice them up a little bit. You know, we all play um, probably a lot. And then when you find songs that you really like and then you keep playing them the same way, sometimes we think, oh, I love this song, but I want to play it a different way. So maybe I can give you some ideas on how to change things up or start new arrangements. I did put three handouts, sent Mary three handouts, and I wanted to start with the handout that is called Arranging Outline. And I'll kind of go through it and talk to you about some different things. And then we'll move on to the next one. We may not have time to cover everything, but I wanted to give you something to have and think about that you can take with you and work on your own. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And what we may do is after each, we have three sections. After each section, I will ask Gretchen if there are questions. And if you do have a question, maybe just put a Q, capital Q, and then put your question so that it'll be easier for her to read. And if you don't remember that, that's okay. No big deal. Okay, so let's talk about this incredible instrument that we play. Whether you play a lever harp, a lap harp, a pedal harp, these instruments have such a beautiful tone and a beautiful range, and it just really touches people. And I think it's our responsibility to explore the sounds on our harp so that we can reach and touch people. um, as you play on your harp, I'm sure you've found the register on your harp that you like the best. Personally, I my harp is an electric harp, and I love the bass on my harp. I love the rich sounds on the bottom. They're warm and they ring. The top of the harp, of course, is brighter, and it has kind of a different tones, but just different ways of the in terms of resonance and that sort of thing. So as you explore your harp, just play a melody. It can be anything. Okay, that register playing the melody is lovely, but if you think, okay, well, that's kind of muddy, let's move it up. Okay, that's even brighter. Okay, but if you want to move it up, just find the melody. Start with the melody and find the place on your harp that you think it sounds the best, and then go from there. The resonance, the next thing I wrote on here was respect your resonance, just like I did with that big chord at the beginning. It's very resonant, right? Particularly on my harp, but yours too. You'll find the places that it is. And keep that in mind as you play chords, because you want to let that resonance ring as long as possible. And maybe play right? We don't need to play a bunch of activity and notes. As long as there's something ringing, this resonance, work with it. Okay? And um, I encourage you just to experiment on your harp. Move around in the different spots on your harp and see. There may be places that you've discovered that you've never played the melody before and you kind of like it there. So work with that. Music is about sound and not notes. So this relates to the resonance thing. So when you create a beautiful resonance of a beautiful chord, it's the sound that's important, and then you can build on that with melody and chords. Okay? All right. Now, I am a massive proponent. Part of my music, or the most of my music, is theory. Okay? And like Mary said, I do have a jazz theory workbook out for harpists, and it basically talks about basic music theory, and then it sort of interjects some jazz into it, which we'll do in a minute. But it's so important that you understand what key you are in throughout a song, if you want to change that key, and think about the chord progression. Okay? For example, when I'm playing the beginning of The Water is Wide, the whole time I'm playing that, I'm telling myself I'm playing a C chord, but I'm not playing the third. I'm leaving out the third, which is, of course, in the C chord, which is E, right? Now, why do I do that? Well, I want a sense of ambiguity and mystery. And then when the melody comes in, there's the E. So it makes that E so much more important than if you just played the E over and over again as the introduction, because they've already heard the E, right? The listener's already heard the E, so it doesn't have as much of an impact if you... Right? These are things that you can think about, and they relate to theory as you go through and make arrangements. Now, also, the next thing on the list, what key works best on your harp? Well, as you know, flat keys sound, just in terms of resonance and beauty and beautiful tone, they sound wonderful. Why? Well, it's physics, right? There's less tension on the strings. So you may want to consider playing in flat keys and experiment with those. Natural keys are good as well. But sharp keys, they are brighter, right? But they're not as resonant because you have more tension on the strings from your pedals or from your levers. So these are things when you're approaching a new piece to think about. Is this piece sad? Is it melancholy? Is it slow? Then maybe I want to make it warmer with flat keys. Is this piece fast and happy? Well, then maybe I want to use sharps in those keys because it makes it brighter and more fun. So these are things to think about. Okay, next we have, how are we doing on time? I'm going to watch. Okay, know the 3 most important chords in a key. Well, I think we all know that to establish a key, the most important chord is going to be the 1 chord, right? Or tonic. I think we all understand that. If we're in the key of C, at some point you want to play C so that they know that that's home base, right? You could start with it or move into it, right? That's where we're at. The second most important chord is the chord that has the tendency to move to the C, which is we all know this, I bet, the 5 chord, right? So if we're in the key of C, if we go to the 5 chord, which is G, and if you want to add the 7th, that gives it even more of a tendency to go back to C. Now, if you're at your harp, to pull your harp back for a second, if you're at your harp, and I want us to play with me, just play the C chord in root position, C, E, G, okay? All right? All right. Now, the 5 chord, of course, is G, right? And then go back to C. Okay, well, that sounds okay, but to make it more powerful going from the C to the G, you have to think about moving in tiny little, the smallest distance between each chord tone. And this is called voice leading. So if we play the C in root position, and we want to play the G, well, is there a common tone between C and G? Yes, it's the G. So leave your thumb on G, and the other 2 notes in the G chord are G, B, D. So all you have to do is take 2 and 3 and move them down. And you can keep the G on top. And then go back to C. This is an inversion of G. You all probably know this, but it doesn't hurt to talk about it. So play with me the C chord 4 times. Now the G chord, keeping the G on top, back to C. Okay? Now, another way to create a really strong tendency in the 5 chord is to add the 7th. So in the G chord, G, B, D, F, or 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay? So that 7th really gives you a tendency note to want to resolve to C. So let's try our exercise again with C, E, G, and then we're going to go to the, move the fingers down to B and D, but we're going to add the F in there. Okay, so you have to switch your fingers around. So let's try that pattern again. So we're going to do C 4 times, C, 2, 3, 4. Now do the G7. 2, 3, 4, back to C. Okay? So the 1, 5 is the strongest chord progression. The next one that I challenge you to work on your own is the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 5 or 5, 7, and 1. That's a real strong chord progression to define the key you're in. So if you'll just write down 1, 2, 5, 1, then you can figure it out in the keys that you're working on, that you want to create an arrangement in. Okay? All right. And then the next step, of course, is to look at your melody notes and see what common notes are in the melody and what chords you can fit with those notes. All right? And this puts theory into play. Then you start thinking about the chord, the notes in the chord and the notes in the melody, and mix and match and see how that works. So if I went right, twinkle twinkle, I just did C, and the next note is an A, and I just went to the 4 chord or F, Okay. Okay, you could do that. Or on the first chord, the C is also in an A minor chord. So why not? And the A is also in a D minor 7, right? So I won't get into all that. But the point is explore each melody note and try to figure out what chords. The C could be in an A minor. It could be in a C. It could be in a D minor 7. All right, just explore all the different chords, and don't always stick with the one that is traditional. Okay, or play the traditional one first, and then the next time you play, change the chords up. Right? That just gives it a little flavor, and it just makes it interesting. Now, we'll talk about left hand spacing in just a minute, and let's move down to the next one that says keep the melody on top. The ear perceives the top note as the melody. As you're arranging things, I've found that it's best to keep the melody on top or with your right hand, and then you can play supporting chords under it and the bass line under that. Okay? Just because your listener always perceives the top note as the melody. Okay? That's just the way our ears perceive things. And then, of course, like I talked about, you can add sevenths to the chords for color. Okay? But the main thing is just to keep it simple. Keep it simple so you can emphasize the melody. Okay? Now, before we move to the next thing, I just want to check. Gretchen, do we have any questions so far? No, we're good. Okay, great. Feel free to pop a question in if you don't understand what's going on. So let's move to the page that is actually from my theory book, and it's a single page, and it says at the top, page 10. Okay? And this is 7th chord applications. Okay? Let's look at this together. In order to apply 7th chords in playing, try these simple guidelines to help facilitate easier chord chart reading and improvisation. Triads are defined by the relationship between the root, 3rd, and 5th, right? 1, 3, 5. When playing accompaniment to a melody, the two most important notes are the root and the 3rd. The 5th doesn't have to be there. It can, but it doesn't have to be. It's primarily the most important are the root of the chord and the 3rd. Okay? So if you're going to create a chordal accompaniment to a melody, like I did a minute ago, is I played the C, E, G. Everybody play that with me if you're at your harp. Just play the C, E, G, C triad. Okay? Now let's take the G out because we don't really need it. Just play C and E together. Okay, well, that sounds okay. It's kind of boring. So let's move the E up an octave, and now we have C and E together. If you can reach that. If you can't reach it, just play the C on the bottom and then the E on top. Or together. Right? Look how far apart those two notes are, and yet you're still playing the C chord, right? The wider the spacing that you have in your left hand, the better, because of the overtones. If you're playing like thirds way down here on the harp, it's very muddy sounding. So take the E and move it up an octave. Now, if you have the strings, move that down an octave for a low C and an E. And if you don't worry about it. But experiment with the low notes on your harp, and experiment with just playing with the chords, just playing the root and the 3rd. okay? And you can try that for a while. And then when you've got that down and you're ready to do something else, let's add the 7th to the chord. And if you'll notice in the middle of the page, on this page 10, I've got root position C7, C, E, G, B flat. So play that with me if you're at your harp. Okay? Okay, well, that's pretty clear. Sounds like a C7. All right, let's take the 5th out. So we're going to have C, E, and A flat. B flat, sorry. C, E, B flat. I can't talk and play. I don't know about you guys, but my mouth doesn't work sometimes. Okay, so C, E, B flat. Now let's take this E and move it up an octave. So we have C, B flat, E. Can you all try that? C, B flat, E. Doesn't that sound more interesting than, right? It just adds some more color to the, by using the root, then the 7th, and the 3rd. And I cannot tell you how many times that's all I play. And I have a harp ensemble, and we're talking about that going from, a 2-5-1, and all I'm using is the root, 7th, 3rd, root, 3rd, 7th, and root, 7th, 3rd. And when you hear that, you know what the chord progression is. You don't need all those extra notes. So experiment with that. Let's do one more, okay? Let's try a G7, okay? So let's start with playing the G7 low on the harp, and we're going to play in a root position. Ready? G, B, D, F. Okay, we do need a B natural, right? G, B, D, F. Well, those are low, small intervals that are low, so they're pretty muddy. So let's take the G out, the 5th, let's leave the G off, and play G, B, F. Okay? Now take the B and move it up an octave. So now you get G, F, B. Okay? Root, 7th, 3rd. That just sounds so much more interesting than, right? And as you start to play and you start to figure out what chords fit with the melody, start doing chord progressions with, oh, let's do this exercise. I got an idea. So let's play we're going to play a C major 7. So we have C, B, E. Okay? So we're going to need that B natural, right? We flatted it earlier, but let's do a natural. And we're going to play this formation of the chord, and we're going to move it up a string each time. And if you don't want to play them together, play them one at a time, okay? So we're going to start with C, B, E. Are we ready? Here we go. Now let's do that same formation up a string. So we're now on the D minor 7. D, C, F. Okay? Let's move it up a string. Let's do the E minor 7. E, D, G. Move it up another string. F major 7. F, E, A. So we're just moving up one string at a time. Starting on the G, then A. Now B. And C. Okay. Does that make sense? Nod your heads if that makes sense. If it doesn't, ask me a question. Does that make sense? Maybe. Okay, it's just a good way to practice theory and practice using these chords with wide spacing. Okay? All right. Now, let me play you the introduction to one of my pieces. It's an original piece. It's called Carol on Wave. And in the introduction, I use this theory of wide open spaces with the chords. Okay? And let me play a little bit of it for you, and then I'll go back and say what the chords are as I'll try to say them as I play. Okay? Here we go. Okay, so as I'm playing this, what am I thinking about? Well, in general, the first chord is an F major 7, and I'm utilizing primarily the root, the 7th, and the 3rd. Okay. The next chord is an E minor 7, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm adding a few more notes, but primarily that's what I'm doing. Then I go back to the F major 7. Then I go back to the E minor 7. Then I go down to the D minor 7. E minor 7. D minor 7 again. To G. So as you're playing, just start thinking theoretically, okay? It's important. Now you can make it a lot simpler than that. I have a piece called Lullaby that I'll demonstrate for you. Sounds like a rocking chair, right? I'm just doing 1 and 5. Letting that have a lot of space to create the rocking rhythm. So my left hand basically is this pattern over and over again, almost for the whole piece. And that's it. So that opens it up and gives you a lot of space and just creates a bed, or this rhythmic bed of things that the harp, that the right hand can play above it, the melody and the chords. So that's another way to look at things. Now let's see, how are we doing? We're doing good. We're doing good on time. Okay. Let's move over to Gretchen. Do we have no questions yet?
We had somebody who asked about what the third most important chord was. I'm not exactly sure was mentioned.
Absolutely. Probably the third most important chord would be the 2 chord. And the progression is 2, 5, 1. So if we're in the key of C, we start on a D minor 7 for 2, 5 would be the G7 to 1, which is C. Okay, 2, 5, 1. Some people like to say it's the 4 chord. 4, 5, 1. And they're both 4 to 5 to 1 is also very powerful. But personally, when I hear 2, 5, 1, I really feel that is more powerful than 4, 5. Also, it's a little more interesting because in traditional music, we hear 4, 5, 1 all the time. So to change that to 2, the 2 to the 5 to the 1 makes it a little more interesting. Good question. Anything else before we continue? Great. Okay. Sorry, my dog. It's dinner time. Okay. So let's look at the next 2 sheets. And these are exercises that I encourage you to practice to get a feel for playing 7th chords in different inversions. So can we all try? It's the one that says a touch of jazz at the top. Theory and chord voicings are most important tools to use. Adding 7th is also the best method to do that. So let's play. If you want to just use your right hand, play the C major 7, C, E, G, B in root position. Okay? Then we're going to take the B and we're going to move it down an octave. So now you have B, C, E, G. Okay? Then you take that G and move that down an octave and get G, B, C, E. So you have to decide for yourself which one you like the best, okay? And just start with that one. Personally, I like the number 2 and 3 a lot because you get some rub or dissonance right in the middle and on the bottom. And to me, it just adds a sparkle to your music, and that resonance, of that dissonance really makes a difference. Okay, so that is a C. That's an exercise you can use with C major or any major triad, really. Let's move to the next one, which is A minor. Okay, I put A minor 9, but actually, okay, let me explain this one to you because if you're not familiar with jazz chords, when you spell a chord and you start stacking thirds, then you start getting 7ths and 9ths and all that. So let's don't even look at the music. Just let's look at C for a minute because we're all familiar with C. So if you play a C major 7 and play it with me, okay? We're going to play C, E, G, B, right? Okay. C, 1, 3, 5, 7. If you stack another third on top, the D, that D is a note that is 9 steps above the root. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's why they call it a 9th. Okay? Now, that is a cool sound to begin with. Right? That's a really cool sound. But what would make it more interesting is if you take that D and you move it down an octave, and you stick it in the middle somewhere or on the bottom. And I challenge you to experiment with that, okay? Now, let's look at the sheet and look at the top line, look at the fourth measure. Now I have an A minor 9, right? So if we play an A minor 9, start with the A minor, A, C, E, that's 1, 3, 5. And you add the seventh, which is the G. Stack another third on top, which would be the B, right? Okay? That's an A minor 9. Does this make sense? We're just stacking another third on top. We've done the root, the third, the fifth, the seventh, and now we're adding the ninth on top. Yes? Any questions? We're good? Good. Okay. Take the B now at the top and move it down an octave. Ooh, we've got that dissonance in there, right? That just, I don't know about you, but I just love that sound, and people really respond to that when they hear it. As opposed to, okay, that's pretty too, but come on. When you hear that, you go, ooh, what's that? Okay, so you take the G, and let's move it down an octave. And this is one of my personal favorite chords, period. There it is. It's an A minor 9. So I challenge you to look at this line, the first line, and experiment with these chords and experiment with the root position and the other inversions and see which one you like. And when you hit a chord like that in your piece, add the ninth or the seventh to it and just see how it goes. Now, if you look at the second line, which is an excerpt from What Child Is This? My arrangement of that, and you can kind of read at the top how I think about these chords. The first one's A minor 9, then B minor 7 with E in the bass. The next chord is A minor 9. The next chord is B minor 7 with E in the bass. A minor 9, B minor 7 in the bass, A minor 9. And that's how I think about things when I go through these chord progressions and I play and arrange. This work right here, What Child Is This, is explained. The chord progressions are explained in my jazz theory book, and at the end you do get like a little chart, and you get it sort of written out in a basic chart, but I also have an arrangement of it as well. But I just wanted to explain to you what the minor sevenths and the minor ninths were all about, okay? Because I think it's important to know theoretically what's going on. You know, you can hear it. You have great ears, I'm sure. You're a harpist, and you hear it and you like it. But if you know why you like it and what it is, then that makes it so much more powerful, and it sticks, and you can use it again, okay? Now, I already played The Water Is Wide. At the bottom, there's an excerpt where I use the open chords. Etc. Okay, so this gives you a little excerpt there so you can see it's a good explanation of wide open chords and how you can stretch out your left hand. Okay. All right. Now let's look at the second page, the excerpt from His Eyes on the Sparrow. This one again uses major ninths. Now, if you'll notice in the first chord that's played is now 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. It's a major ninth chord. And I've actually written it in kind of in root position, right? And then the next chord is a G major 7. And the slash means that the letter to the right is the name of the bass note in your left hand. So it's a G major 7 with D in the bass, then back to G major 7, and then we have an A13 flat 9, which we won't talk about right now, but it again, it's another one of those really cool chords that just adds color. And the more you explore doing these different chords, the more interesting and the more you'll start to use them. So His Eyes on the Sparrow, it's not written down, but what I do at the beginning is do a little hint of the melody, and then I play these big chords. So I'll try and play through it and do my best to talk through what I'm playing. So this is a G chord with an A added note. This next chord is a C 9, D chord, A7, so that's how I begin the piece. So it kind of sounds like a hymn, right? It ends with, I can't sing amen, right? Like you do in church, the 4 chord to the 1 chord. And then I go into, this is what's written on the page. Then the melody. So I take it almost into a Latin feel, kind of a pick up the pace. So it's not only the introduction is really, really slow, but the rest is has a beat to it. And I like doing that. So anyway, questions? Question, do we have anything, comments, questions?
Somebody would like to wonder if you could go through the scale tones included in the A minor ninth again.
Of course. If you will look on the top, and it's written out on the top of the page, it says A Touch of Jazz. It's on the top line, 1, 2, 3, the 4th measure. If you'll notice that you have an A in the bass, or the root of the chord in the bass, okay? And you can play that. And then your right hand plays the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th. Right? Does that make sense? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And then the best way to get used to these is to take that and then look at the next measure. You move the B down an octave, and then you move the G down an octave. So, right? So you can practice. Oops, sorry. And just do that over and over and over again so that you can start feeling the formations in your hand. As we know, playing the harp is all about muscle memory. And if you start to do it enough, then your hand will automatically go there. And this is where you want to get, because as you're reading music and maybe starting to read charts where you just have the melody line and then the chords above it, this gives you, you start to respond to those quickly. Does this make sense? I'm just trying to give you something to spice up like what you typically do, and in case you're getting tired of what you do, you can always add things like this to it. And hopefully this makes sense. We've just got a few more minutes. Are there any other questions, comments, anything that you would like me to address? Anything at all?
Okay, so I think somebody would like to know the difference between the minor ninth and the major ninth chords.
Good question. That's an excellent question. Okay. How can I describe this quickly? In a minor 9 chord, and let's look at that A minor 7. We have A, C, E, G, B. Okay? It's all about the intervals. Okay, and it is explained in the theory book, but the bottom triad is A, C natural, E, meaning a minor triad. Right? Okay. And then the G, C, E, G, you have a minor 7th between the A and the G, between the root and the 7th. And then the 9th is just, in terms of relation to the root, it's just a whole step above the root. So basically, the minor 9 is a minor triad, okay, A, C, E, with a minor 7th, and then a 2nd or a 9th on top. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay? Now to turn that into a major 7th, the easiest way to do that is, obviously, the bottom triad's going to be a major triad, right? So I want you to put your pedals or your levers as if you are in A major. So what is the key signature of A major? It is, do we know? I think we do, right? 3 sharps, F, C, G, okay? If you do that and you play that A chord again, you get A, C sharp, E, G sharp, B. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay? And you have a major 3rd, you have a minor perfect 5th, you have a major 7th, and a 9th. Okay? I know this is a little crazy, but it's all determined by the way that it's easiest to think about is if you treat the bottom note as the key you're in, okay? If you're trying to define, figure out chords. And then if you're in A major, then you set your levers or your pedals in that, and then you play the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, and there's your major 9. Then if you want to turn it into a minor 9, then you think of A minor. So the key signature of A minor is no sharps or flats, right? A natural minor. So you move your pedals or your levers to all naturals, and you get the minor 9. Does that make sense? I know it's hard to explain quickly, but I tell my students when we're identifying intervals and chords and things, if you start thinking this way while you're learning them, it just makes it a lot easier to just pretend that the bottom note of the chord is the key you're in. And then if you need a chord like a major 7 or a major 9, you set your pedals like you're in that major key. And then if you need a minor chord or a minor 7 or a minor 9, you set your pedals in that natural minor mode, and then you're able to figure it out. Does that make sense? So far, so good? Okay, let's take this, since we all understand that, let's take it one more step. A minute ago, you asked me what are the three most important, what's the third most important chord in a chord progression? And I said it was the 2, right? The 2, then the 5, then the 1. Okay, so put your harp in C major. We'll stick to C major. That makes it easier. So when you, and I'm sure that you know this and have done this, but you understand that when you play the triads built on each note in the scale, you get a series of major and minor triads, right? The C triad in C major obviously is major, right? The 2 chord, and I hope you're playing this with me, the 2 chord is minor. The 3 chord is minor. The 4 chord is major. The 5 chord is major. The 6 chord is minor. The 7 chord is diminished. And then the 1 chord again is major, right? Okay, so you can do that same exercise and add the 7th on top of each chord. So you would just add an extra 3rd on top. So let's go through and name the chords with the 7ths. So C, E, G, B is in fact a major 7, okay? The D chord is minor, so when you add the 7th, it's a minor 7. Okay, why do I say that? Because you think of the distance between the root and the 7th, and that is a minor 7th as opposed to a major 7th. Maybe a little too much information. Okay. Anyway, so the 2 chord is D minor 7. Let's move to the E chord. The E chord is minor, so when you add a 7, it's called E minor 7. The F chord is major, so it's F major 7. The 5 chord is an interesting one. It is actually called a dominant 7th because you have a G major triad and then you have a 7th, a minor 7th. That's for another class. Okay, let's keep going. The A minor 7 and the B diminished. We won't talk about that yet. And the C, okay? These are exercises that I encourage you to do and keep working on them. Okay. Now, what I want to do, a couple things before we go. I know I gave you a lot of material. Gretchen, please put my email address in the chat, and also, Mary, I know you're going to do a follow-up and you'll include my email. If you have any questions about anything we went over or anything in general, just email me and I'll be happy to respond in the best way that I can when typing wise, but I'll be happy to explain things. I also, as you know, all of this music, all my arrangements and everything are at Melody Music, and Mary's going to send you a discount follow-up email, right, Mary? Yes. I think that's
Yeah,
right.
well, the coupon code is Cindy, and I'll send that to you. I made a category of all Cindy's music. So, and yeah.
Right. Thank you. And also, if you are interested, I do have a series of classes on Harp Column Academy. So if you are registered with them or you wish to register with them, you'll be able to access a whole, like a 10, I think it's 10 lessons on arranging. And I just touched on a few things today, but it's it's fun. Arranging is fun, and I really thank you, Mary, and I thank you, Gretchen, for your help, and I thank you all for being here. Gretchen, would you do me a favor? And I don't know if you can do this. I don't think I can. Maybe I can. I want to get, if it's okay with you guys, maybe I can. Oh yeah, I can. Okay. I would love to get a screenshot for me, and if you want to put your camera on, if you don't, that's cool. You don't have to. But I'd love to see your lovely faces, and I would love to just have a picture of everybody that's here. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And it's good to see everybody. I hope you're staying cool wherever you are. And if you're in Hawaii, well, we're all coming to see you. So just get ready for some company. Okay, are we ready? I'm going to take a picture. Here we go. Is everybody ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now I need to do page 2. Let me do it again. Oh, there's Kate. Hi, Kate. Oh my gosh, this is so cool to see everybody. Okay, page 2. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And before I go, are there any other pressing questions about anything? I see all the thank yous. Thank you guys so much. Oh my gosh, you're from Australia. That is so cool. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Well, thank you again. And please keep in touch and let me know if you have any questions about anything. I'm happy to help. Mary, do you have any more to add or to say?
Thanks so much. And people are happy. And thanks very much.
Thank you all, and have a great evening and happy arranging. All right. Take care. We'll see everybody later. Bye-bye. Thanks again, Mary. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.